This is my first video update coming to you from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Friday. Let's talk about some news. And in the video I made yesterday, I mentioned that Russia is just about due for another missile drone strike in Ukraine. And sure enough, this morning, we have got just that. Russia has already fired, as of this morning, Cyprus time, Russia has fired 72 missiles at Ukraine in the last hour. They have damaged energy facilities in the east and south of the country. I am hearing that the metro is out once again in Kiev. Odessa, blackouts, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, blackouts, explosions, missile strikes, just about everywhere in Ukraine. The only region I am not seeing right now as I'm scrolling through all of the areas that have been hit: Nikolaev, Kharkov, Zaporozhye, Kiev, Kirovograd, Kryvyi Rog, Poltava, Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk. The only region I'm seeing right now where I'm not getting any information of strikes is Lviv. Way out west, I'm not seeing anything, but maybe that's going to be coming later on. 72 strikes, 72 missiles in the last hour. And they have been successful because we are getting lots of reports of a lot of damage done. So when the Elensky regime comes out later in the day and says that they managed to take out all of the missiles with their air defense systems, I am reporting this pretty much in real time now as it's coming in, and we're getting all kinds of reports of electric infrastructure being taken out. The governor of the Odessa region, Marchenko, urged the inhabitants of the region not to comment on the blackouts, on the consequences of strikes, or on the work of air defense in order not to help the enemy plan new strikes. Yeah, Odessa is going through a terrible, terrible time with these strikes. So 1 week you don't get strikes, the next week you get strikes. And next week we're not going to get strikes, and the week after we're going to get strikes. The Kremlin said that they have received no information about a pause in the hostilities during the holiday season, the New Year, Christmas, etc. So I imagine this 1 week on, 1 week off thing is going to continue straight through the holidays. And yesterday I was reporting about how the Collective West was talking about how Russia is using 40-year-old ammo, and in the beginning of 2023, that's it. Russia's going to be tapped out. They are tapping out. They're done. They have no more missiles. They're trying to find ammo and missiles and weapons from North Korea and Iran. But once again, it's every other week you get the missile and drone strikes. This is a pattern. It's become, over the past 3 months, this is just the routine of things. And eventually, because all of this stuff is cumulative, eventually you are going to get the complete collapse of Ukraine's electric grid. I mean, the complete collapse. Already in Odessa, you have multiple days without electricity, and people are trying to get onto the street. They're trying to protest and voice their grievances, their dissatisfaction. They're upset. They're suffering. But the Elensky regime, the person of the year Elensky regime, he squashes all kinds of protests in Odessa because of their terrible situation without electricity. Anyway, that is the situation right now. I'm sure as the day goes along, we're going to get more and more missile strikes throughout Ukraine. And let's talk about the Ukraine commander, Valery Zaluzhny, the Armed Forces of Ukraine commander's interview to The Economist that he gave the other day. And one of his big concerns as he gave this interview to The Economist was that the Russians are going to eventually knock out all of Ukraine's electric grid. And Zaluzhny made the point that if the electric grid gets completely knocked out and the entire country is plunged into complete darkness, well, then the military is going to have a difficult time. The people are going to have a difficult time. The railway infrastructure, food, water, refugees pouring into Europe. He even made it a point to say that even the soldiers that are fighting in the front lines, they're going to have to fight, knowing that their family members and their towns, villages, cities are without electricity, heat, water, etc. And he's like, how are they going to fight? In other words, he was saying that our entire armed forces are just going to be completely demoralized. So that was his big concern during this interview with The Economist. His concern was that the Russians, sooner or later, are just going to completely knock out the entire grid of Ukraine. Now, he made a lot of other important statements in this interview with The Economist. I think the two really interesting points that Zaluzhny brought up with regards to the fighting that is taking place is, one, he claims that Russia will be making another attempt to take Kiev, and two, Ukraine is going to be, I don't know if did he actually say they're going to? He hinted at the fact that for Ukraine to take Crimea, which is part of the Elensky regime's overall plan, their overall strategies to retake Crimea, in order for them to do that, Ukraine needs to first take Melitopol, and then when they take Melitopol, they will have broken the land bridge that Russia has established in Crimea, and then they will be able to eventually lay siege to Crimea. I think those were the two really interesting points that he made with regards to the actual strategy of the fighting. He also talked about how the Russian mobilization has worked. He mentioned that the mobilization has been successful, and he made it seem like the mobilization breathed new life into reading his statements into what was a defeated Russia. That was the way he was framing it. It was a defeated Russia, and then the mobilization kind of gave them the momentum that they needed to avoid a defeat. That was kind of the way he was framing it. What else did he say? He said that he trusts the generals. He listens to the people on the ground. He said the partial mobilization did work. He said it was successful. He also said that Russia has another 1.2 to 1.5 million people that they can mobilize. Quote, we estimate they have a reserve of 1.2 to 1.5 men, Zaluzhny said. And what else did he say here? He has no doubt that Russia is going to be going into Kiev. According to Zaluzhny, 200,000 new soldiers are now being trained to march on the Ukrainian capital. And with regards to Ukraine's mobilization, this was an interesting statement. he said that Ukraine really has no need for an additional mobilization. He says what Ukraine really needs is weapons, more armored vehicles and ammunition and stuff like that, which actually runs counter to a lot of reports coming in that Ukraine is trying to put together some mobilization. Actually, I think it was the deputy defense minister who announced that in 2023 that in the new year they're going to do another mobilization. So it kind of runs a bit counter to what the Ministry of Defense officials are saying. So maybe you're seeing a little bit of a difference between the politicians at the Ministry of Defense and the actual command in Ukraine. Zaluzhny is saying they don't need more people; they have enough people. What they need is equipment, guns, weapons, missiles, ammo, armored vehicles, and stuff like that. I imagine that Zaluzhny has a better understanding as to what he needs. Obviously, he's the one that's commanding the forces, and I imagine he understands that he has enough at the moment. He has enough Ukraine military, as well as mercenary and NATO fighters, and he also has tens of thousands of Ukraine military and NATO fighters and mercenaries that are currently being trained in Europe. So I imagine he's putting all those numbers together, and he says we really don't have to do a full-on mobilization. We probably have enough men to keep this thing going. And Melitopol was another big reveal. The desire, the plan to go after Crimea, and to go after Crimea, you have to go to Melitopol. Of course, you have to first go through the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant in that area, and then you move down towards Melitopol, and then from Melitopol is where you start to attack Crimea. Of course, Zaluzhny made the point that at the moment, going towards Melitopol and Crimea is just out of the question, this type of offensive. What he said is that to reach the borders of Crimea, as of today, we have to cover a distance of 84 kilometers to Melitopol. And he said that would give the armed forces of Ukraine full fire control of the land corridor to Crimea. Because he says from Melitopol, we can already fire at Crimea with the same HIMARS. But he also said for such an offensive, Ukraine needs resources which are in short supply. With such resources, I cannot conduct new large operations, although we are now working on one. It is on the way, but you can't see it yet. We are using far fewer shells. I know I can defeat this enemy, but I need resources. I need 300 tanks, 600 to 700 BMPs, and 500 howitzers. Then I think it's realistic to reach the lines on February 23rd, but I can't do it with 2 brigades. I get what I get, but it is less than what I need. That is the direct quote when he was asked about Ukraine's next offensive, which is, according to Zaluzhny, if he's putting his cards out there and he's being truthful and showing his hand, which you have to say maybe he's not, but if it is indeed Melitopol and Crimea, well, then he is saying what he needs. Those are the weapons that he needs. He believes he can get it done. And at the moment, he just doesn't have what he needs to get it done. So when all is said and done, it is this interview is getting the armed forces of Ukraine, their commander, to do what Elensky has been doing now for the past 9 to 10 months, which is to go to a collective West mainstream media outlet and pretty much say, give us more weapons. We can take Crimea, we can push Russia back to where it was on February 23rd, but I need this, and this. And he pretty much laid it out what he needs. So that's pretty much the what I believe is the purpose of this interview. I think that you have someone like Zaluzhny speak to The Economist, which is the gold standard when it comes to neocon warmonger publications. I mean, The Economist is the gold standard. It is number one when you talk about these types of mainstream media outlets that are pushing the neocon narrative. And so the reason that you compel Zaluzhny to speak to The Economist is because I feel that the collective West is just getting sick of hearing Elensky over and over again asking for money and weapons. It's just people are absolutely tired of Elensky. I mean, you can feel it, you see it. Actually, I've even seen street art in various European capitals where they have like Elensky, just like street art of Elensky biting into like the EU flag or images like that showing Elensky as a type of. I saw one street art, I believe it was in I either want to say Spain or Portugal or maybe Italy. I'm not sure. I'll try to dig up the photo. But it doesn't matter. It was just, the European Union flag. You had a bunch of locusts around the flag, and then you had Elensky there as well, and they were all biting at the flag, And yeah. Thank you. And yeah, so you had the flag there, and you had Elensky munching on the EU flag to show that he's like a locust, eating away at the EU's well-being. But people are tired. They're tired of Elensky. They're tired of him constantly asking for money and weapons. And so what do? You get The Economist, and you get Zaluzhny, the commander of the armed forces, and he gives kind of a sit rep as to what's going on. Once again, Ukraine can win this. They can take Crimea. They can make a move towards Melitopol, and they can push the Russians back. But he needs X, Y, and Z. And of course, you also give the warnings of a Russian attack towards Kiev and how you see things unfold. So he gives a kind of sit rep there as to the situation. He warns about the dire straits of Ukraine's electric grid. And you publish it on The Economist, and then you pass it out to collective West leaders and EU parliament members and US senators and Congress people and all this stuff, and you start getting the money and the weapons wheel turning again. Not that it ever stopped, but I think it's more coming from Zaluzhny. I think now you're starting to add more weight to the Ukraine ask. After a while, you get tired of hearing from the same damn person that I want this and this and this. People are just getting tired of it, so you have to spread it out now. You have to get some more people, and you can't put out a Stovich. You can't put these guys. These guys are jokers. They're clowns. So you get to the commander, and that is why he gave the interview to The Economist. Now, is Russia going to be making a move on Kiev? I don't know. So Zaluzhny says they have 200,000 soldiers there, and they're going to make another move on Kiev. Who knows? Who knows what the Russians are planning? But it's possible. There was a lot of talk about what's going on in Belarus, and that's going to be the point from which the Russians make their move towards Kiev. But no one really knows. Perhaps Zaluzhny, if there's anybody that would know, perhaps it is Zaluzhny. Or maybe he's just saying this to put some fear into the governments and the institutions that are holding back and giving him all of the weapons list that he's requesting. So that was the interview from Zaluzhny. I think I've summed it up pretty well what what he's going for, and his greatest fear, which is the electric grid. But he believes that Ukraine can win. That is a sense that I got from this interview. My sense is that he does believe if he gets everything that he asks, Ukraine can win this conflict. That's how it seemed to me, and I think that does fall in line with a lot of collective West leaders. I do believe that there are a lot of leaders in the collective West that really do believe that Ukraine can win this thing and that they are going to get regime change in Russia. Still to this day, they hold on to that dream. And I noticed it in many of the articles that are now coming out about tribunals. Have you guys noticed all the articles that are coming out about the EU setting up tribunals? Tribunals being set up in the Netherlands to try Russian officials. Tribunals being setting up in the UK. Actually, the UK is even now training judges. They are actually training judges to be ready to try Russian officials, Lavrov, Zakharova, Putin. They're being trained to do this. The EU, Borrell said the other day that he's trying to work with the UN, and they're trying to get tribunals put together as well. Actually, even in the EU's ninth sanctions package, there are parts of it, according to sources that have seen the documents, where they talk about putting together an eventual tribunal of which they are going to actually put then disposed Russian President Vladimir Putin on trial in front of the world to see. So, I mean, this is on their mind. My point is that Zaluzhny, by saying all of this stuff in this interview and saying, look, if you just give me all of this stuff, we are going to win this thing. I am going to be in Melitopol, and I will then have Crimea in my sights, and that'll be the end of Russia. By having this interview, by staging this interview in The Economist, and then distributing it to the political leadership in the West, what you're going to do is you're going to confirm what they've internalized. I mean, they believe there is a big group of leaders in the collective West, probably lower level leaders, but doesn't matter. Presidents, prime ministers of countries, say like Cyprus or Greece, that actually do believe that Ukraine is going to be able to win this thing. And if we just, pushed our governments, our militaries, our finance ministries to give a little bit more, then Zaluzhny is going to be able to get the job done. Here's what he needs. Let's get it to him. Boris Johnson the other day, he pretty much said the same thing, didn't he? He was telling the English people when he was in Parliament, but he was speaking to all of the UK. He was pretty much saying, look, we've got to give Ukraine everything we've got. Everything. We have got to empty out everything that the UK has. Everything. Tanks, missiles, ammo, armored vehicles, everything, and we've got to get it to Ukraine. That was pretty much what Boris told the Parliament and the UK people the other day. This was like 2-3 days ago. He was just saying what Zaluzhny is pretty much hinting at. And so that was the interview with The Economist. The Economist also had an interview with Elensky as well. And this was an interview that they actually had with Elensky like 8-9 days ago, but they just now decided to print the transcript. So this interview coincided with an interview that The Economist had with Blinken. It was kind of like a day separated or 2 days separated. But for some reason, The Economist, they printed this interview to coincide with Zaluzhny's interview, which is interesting. Anyway, Elensky told The Economist that Kiev has no choice but to fight to reestablish the country's 1991 borders because the world failed to guarantee its security, and Ukraine alone is paying the price of the conflict. That is what Elensky said. The Economist actually spoke with Elensky on December 8th, but published an edited transcript only a week later, 2 days prior to the interview with U.S. Secretary of State Blinken. And that was the interview where Blinken said that any peace now would be a phony peace. So any peace deal would not be a real peace deal. Blinken said that the only way for peace to be established is to get back to the February 23 borders and for Russia to surrender. That was what Blinken said, and that is what Elensky is also saying. Quote, this is how it should end, is what Elensky said to The Economist. This is how it should end, because otherwise it is not finished. It is just frozen. Just to leave it as it is now, to say, okay, let's stop, and they take Donbass, the south of our country, or part of it, and Crimea remains with them. Why? Elensky said. We will not be able to. No one would forgive it. All the rhetoric from Zaluzhny to Elensky to Blinken, The Economist, which is kind of putting all of this together. Once again, no surprise that this is coming from The Economist. I don't think there's a surprise with the timing of all of this either. End of the year, Ukraine is coming to a point where either the collective West goes full in, and when I mean full in, I'm hinting at NATO and God knows what else, but we're at a crossroads. Either we're going to go full in and we're going to go for Crimea regime change tribunals, or we're screwed come New Year. That's pretty much the general gist of all of this. And keep in mind, The Economist, the fact that this is all being published and coordinated by The Economist is a huge tell that the neocons are firmly in charge of this strategy. I mean, The Economist is the mouthpiece of the neocons. So the fact that the Economist is putting together all of this narrative, and they're putting together interviews with Blinken, Elensky, Zaluzhny, and they're coordinating all of this as we approach the end of 2022, is a big indication that the neocons, this is what they want. This is where they're going with this. That's unfortunately the feeling that I've got, that I get from all of these interviews, especially the Zaluzhny interview that took place. And when you look at the actions, actually, of the past couple of days of the EU, you get an understanding that it's either the full-on destruction of Russia or nothing's going to do. They're never going to rest until they get the full-on destruction of Russia. I mean, you have the ninth sanctions package, which is going after, once again, Russian media, state media, artists, singers, broadcasters, stuff like this. They're going after the people and the entities. You have that ninth package coming out. You have the reports that NATO and the EU. This is something that not many people are reporting on. That the EU and NATO, they have now agreed to a joint pledge to back Ukraine until the very end, until they see through their plan for Ukraine and for Russia, which is regime change in Russia. They've been trying to put together a joint statement, the EU and NATO, for months now, but Politico reported that they finally have agreed to a joint statement, which is a joint pledge to back Ukraine. It's almost like it's one step away from a formal declaration of war. That is what this pledge is like. And there were a lot of disagreements in putting this together, specifically from Turkey and from Cyprus, actually, that weren't happy with the wording of this pledge. But at the end of the day, they all agreed on the wording, and they've come out with a statement where they're saying we're with Ukraine until the very end, until we see through this project. So not many people are actually reporting about this. EU and NATO agreed to fully support Ukraine's inherent rights to self-defense and to choose its own destiny. And they say that Russia's brutal war has exacerbated a food and energy crisis affecting billions of people around the world. The final draft of the EU and NATO call for Russia to immediately stop this war and withdraw from Ukraine, and they reiterate their unwavering and continued support for its independence. Slovakia, the Elensky curse has hit Slovakia. The government of Slovakia has collapsed, everybody, and this is the latest government in Europe to fall victim to the Elensky curse. Slovakia's coalition government fell on Thursday after losing a no-confidence vote in parliament called by opposition following months of political crisis. In the country's 150-seat parliament, 78 lawmakers, two more than the 76 needed, voted to oust the three-party minority government of Prime Minister Edward Heger. Three coalition lawmakers voted against the government. The Liberal Freedom and Solidarity Party, which requested the vote, withdrew from the coalition government in September. Freedom and Solidarity head Richard Sulik accused the government of incompetence and losing its anti-corruption drive. Finally, Sulik commented on the government's collapse. Yeah, Slovakia government has been teetering on collapse for months now, and it's finally happened. So this is the latest government to fall victim to the Elensky curse. Many more governments are going to collapse. This is coming to a government near you in the collective West. So let's do a clown world and we will wrap this video up. And in this clown world, we are going to talk about Olena Elensky and her recent trip to Paris. And if these reports are to be believed, I don't see why these are false reports. I'm just trying to find the article here. If these reports are true, then it looks like Olena Elensky, the wife of Elensky, when she was in Paris, she decided to go on a very expensive shopping trip. I think something along the lines of 40,000 euros. And she was in Paris talking about the need for more money to be given to Ukraine and the suffering that is now taking place in Ukraine. And after she was done talking about all of the suffering of Ukraine, it looks like she went to the high street of Paris's shopping district. And, well, she went shopping. I can't find the article, but I'll find it in post-production. I've got it somewhere bookmarked, but I can't locate it right now to read some quotes. Anyway, that's the clown world, everybody. I think I will leave the video there. I think I got the Olena Zelensky story correct. I believe it was Paris, and I believe it was 40,000 euros shopping spree. All right, that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. Look for us on Rockfin as well. And the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY. Here we go. Olena Zelensky, wife of Ukrainian President Elensky, reportedly spent 40,000 euros on a shopping trip in Paris while visiting the country to plead for more support for Ukraine. Store employees have claimed online. Okay, so this is coming from store employees. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but, you know, in my Clown World segments, I always shoot from the hip. I play it fast and loose on the Clown World stories. Anyway, what was I saying? Duran shop, 10% off. Look for Alexander's videos. Look for the Duran's videos. What else? Look for my videos. Hit that like. Hit that subscribe if you want. If you don't want, that's also cool. Take care.